Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Wisdom Wednesday. It's March 6th, and today we are going through Proverbs chapter 6. This is a warning that Solomon speaks to his children about folly and adultery. We're going to be focusing in on the first 19 verses of chapter 6, which has more to do with the warning against folly. As Solomon teaches his children, and by extension, we can receive wisdom by reading, understanding, and applying these scriptures to our lives so that we too can be warned against folly, which is so prevalent and easy to fall into. Solomon begins by starting off talking about something that Dave Ramsey calls gazelle intensity. This idea that when we have found ourselves in a problem, in a security or a pledge or a debt that we have, that we should work with gazelle intensity to get out of that. Solomon says, if you have shaken hands in pledge for a stranger, if you've been trapped by what you've said, ensnared by the words of your mouth, so do this to free yourself, since you have fallen into your neighbor's hand. Go to the point of exhaustion and give your neighbor no rest. Allow no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids, and free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of the fowler. What Solomon is divesting into us today as we read Proverbs chapter 6 is this. If we have found ourselves ensnared, trapped, pledged, or in a position where we need to get out of a debt or some sort of promissory note that we've given to someone, he says, do so without allowing sleep to come to your eyes. In fact, do whatever you can right now to begin the process of removing yourself from that ensnarement, from that entrapment, from the pledges, from the debts, and from the promises that we've created that are not useful in our lives. They hold us back. In fact, these things that we do have the ability to unfortunately destroy friendships and families. I'm sure you've had some experiences where there was someone who made a promise, hey, can I borrow $10? And you're like, sure. And they're like, I'll pay you back next week, and next week comes. Or maybe it's the casserole dish, or maybe it's something small and insignificant that really doesn't have much of an effect on your life or on theirs, but there's this underlying reality that they use something of yours that they said they would give back or pay back or do back, but they haven't. And all of a sudden, there's this uneasy feeling that begins to develop over time that if it's not addressed can destroy really good friendships or really close-knit families when it comes to these undealt with traps that we have agreed to by the shaking of hands or the verbalizations of our mouths. Solomon says, go step up to those traps and deal with them with all intensity. Don't let any sleep come to you. If you've ever seen a gazelle run, they run very fast, very quickly. They can go from 0 to 60 faster than most other animals to get away from whatever is hunting them. And Solomon says, with that same intensity, get out of, run away from, or not run away from, but run in a direction that deals with the underlying problem that has existed in your friendships and in your family. Often what we'll find is that these little things begin to snowball into bigger things, and things that we weren't even really frustrated about in the first place become these mountains that we expect the other person to overcome. If you are in the position of being someone who has something owed to you, you can deal with it in a couple of ways. You can say, hey, you borrowed my casserole dish and I would like it back. And I know it's been 25 months, but please give it back to me. Or we can go, hey, I just want to put this out here. You borrowed $20 from me a year ago. You said you would pay me back. You haven't paid me back. I don't want to harbor any ill feelings towards you. So I want to release you from that debt. And I want to say, I forgive you for not paying it back, and I release you from it. Both of these options, as the individuals who is the debtor, are great options. Both of them are uncomfortable, but both of them bring about a restoration to a relationship that could be demised by not dealing with it. So deal with it. The next section of Proverbs chapter 6 is he tells his son to go and look at the ant, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores up provision in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. What's Solomon getting at here? Well, he's saying sometimes what happens in our lives is the fire that God has placed in us to do certain things that we know we're called to do, we suppress in a way where we begin to sleep it off. We sleep off that fire and we put some water on it and we cool it down. And Solomon's saying it's time to get up and it's time to go to work. It's time to get up and it's time to do the things that you were called to do. Quit being lazy about them. He says, go and look at the ant. The ant doesn't have a master, doesn't have a commander, but every day the ant gets up and works. In fact, the ant can live, 10 times their body weight. They do extreme work every single day, preparing for the next season of life. And Solomon says, but the sluggard, the lazy, can't get out of bed. They just sleep and sleep and sleep, and then they're surprised when poverty comes. This is what I believe Solomon is saying in this instance, is that we need to be a little bit more self-starting, self-motivating and getting going, rather than relying on someone telling us what to do constantly. Because when we allow someone else to tell us what to do constantly, the passions of our heart are watered down and no longer create a fire within us to do things. There's been many studies done on motivation and how motivation comes. Sometimes it's like, I don't have the motivation, or I don't have the time, or maybe you have the time but not the motivation, or maybe you have the motivation but you don't have the time. And there's this overarching understanding in a lot of studies that have been done that I've been reading through, is that motivation is the result of doing things. It's not the starting point of doing things. We don't wait for motivation to strike us to begin. We begin, and as our passion and as our heart lights on fire with the thing that we're doing, we become more motivated to continue to do it. Motivation is the result of action. It's not the foundation of action. The foundation of action needs to be this understanding that we have something to do. And I don't mean something to do in a work-based capacity where we need to earn things within our faith or whatever. I mean, we have something to do in the sense that God has created you as an individual with purpose, with passion, with talents, with skills, has gifted you, empowered you, and formed you for things. So go and do them. And as we do them, we will grow in this motivation to continue to do the things that God has called us to do. This is true physically in our work. How many of us go to the gym and we go even knowing we don't want to be there, but we start moving, we get on that skier, we start pedaling the bike, we stand on the treadmill, and all of a sudden, because we're doing something, we're motivated to do more of it. Allow that to be something that you do in your life when it comes to the faith things that God has placed in your heart. That you would not be sitting there waiting for someone, but you would stand up and start so that the motivation would come and you would see that just like the ant, you can go and do what needs to be done in season and out of season because you are empowered by the Spirit of God to do so. Thanks so much for joining me for Wisdom Wednesday today. It was great to be with you, and we will see you next week for another edition of Wisdom Wednesday. God bless.